This is podcast When Does Brahms Come In? I'm Sophie and today we're going to have a talk about the great Russian composer, conductor and teacher Pyotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky. He is called Russia's everything, and his famous ballets, The Nutcracker and Swan Lake, are performed in theaters all over the world, and not only these pieces. He was born in 1840 and at the age of 4 he had already begun to study music. The love for this art was passed on from his parents. His mother often played the piano and harp and sang romances. Music was constantly playing in the Tchaikovsky's house. Despite his musical abilities, his parents wanted Peter to become a lawyer. For 9 years, Tchaikovsky studied at the Imperial School of Law. In 1862, the first conservatory in Russia was opened in St. Petersburg. Tchaikovsky left his service in the Ministry of Justice and began receiving professional musical education. It is believed that his first significant work is an overture based on the plot of Russian classical writer Ostrovsky and his drama The Thunderstorm. Before that, Pyotr Ilyich wrote romances, and the very first one was written together with his sister at the age of 4. When graduating from the conservatory, Tchaikovsky's lowest grade was for conducting, but this didn't stop him from becoming a great conductor sometime later. After completing his studies at the St. Petersburg Conservatory, Tchaikovsky was invited by his teacher's brother to teach at the Moscow Conservatory, which had just opened at the time. Pyotr Ilyich taught classes in harmony, instrumentation, and music theory. Tchaikovsky always had problems with money. He didn't know how to save them, was constantly in debts, and even asked to borrow money from Alexander III. The emperor sent him 3,000 rubles as an allowance, which only covered the composer's debts. A huge role in Tchaikovsky's life was played by Nadezhda von Meck, a famous Russian mecenaz. She wrote to him in 1876, and since then, until the composer's death, they were in constant correspondence. She supplied him with money. In her letters, she always noted the large role his great music played in her life. Despite such long written communication, von Meck and Tchaikovsky never met in person. Now, these letters have been published, and you can purchase a collection of their correspondence. In Russian, of course. Pyotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky had written 10 operas, 3 ballets, 7 symphonies, and much more. 2 operas were burned by the composer himself. People who knew him personally said that Tchaikovsky had a bad temper, he could react to some things in the form of hysterics, was constantly irritating, and suffered from depression. The composer suffered from bad habits too. He smoked a lot and often hung out in nowadays bars. Moreover, scenes from taverns can be vividly imagined while listening to his works. The character and the way Tchaikovsky felt about his life can be heard in his compositions. One of Tchaikovsky's most famous works is the opera Eugen Onegin, based on the novel of the same name in verse by Pushkin. The composer loved to read, and his library contained almost 1,300 books. Pyotr Ilyich wrote to his brother that the plot for the opera was recommended to him by a friend who was an opera singer. At first, the idea, she reckoned, seemed wild to him, but after a while, he remembered it. The opera is based on the drama of Tatiana Larina, the main hero of the novel. In her image, he embodied Antonina Milyukova. She was composer's wife. Their marriage lasted only a couple of weeks, but they couldn't get a divorce. The play premiered in 1878 on the stage of the Moscow Conservatory and then at a small theater in Moscow. Sometimes it is said that you die from what you're afraid to die. That Tchaikovsky was 14 when his mother died of cholera. Since then, he had a fear of dying from this disease. In 1893, the composer contracted cholera after drinking a glass of raw water and later died. Tchaikovsky was born exactly 7 years later than Brahms, on May 7th. Despite the same date of birth, their work was very contradictory. Piotr Ilyich spoke poorly of his colleagues' music, although Johannes never expressed his opinion about Tchaikovsky's works. Their meeting took place in Leipzig when they celebrated New 1888 year together, and it left a pleasant impression on both composers. Where words are powerless, a more eloquent language, that is music, appears fully armed, said Piotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky. His works speak much more than words, and this is mentioned to this day. Brahms will come to see us again, but for now, see you soon. This was When Does Brahms Come In podcast, and sincerely yours, Sophia.